Hello, everybody. Welcome. Chastity, Andrea, how are you guys tonight?
Doing well. How are you?
Good,
Getting you.
good. Thanks for everybody who's watching tonight. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, please shout us out. Let Andrea know that you are watching tonight, giving her some support. Let us know where you're watching from. If you have questions, make sure that you type your questions in the comment field, and we'll make sure that your questions are answered. Don't forget, if you are sharing this live, we cannot see your questions. So if you have hosted your own virtual party, we are unable to see your questions. However, we will see them after the broadcast, and we will make sure that your questions are answered. My name is Lena Lassiter, and I am the president and founder of Forever Healed. We are a nonprofit organization, and we help those who are suffering from pain due to a loss of any kind. We help them to reclaim their lives. We help them to restore. More importantly, we help them to recover. And we do this in several ways. We do this through one-to-one grief recovery classes. We also do group grief recovery classes. We also do the hidden cost of grief in the workplace. We do lunch and learns for corporate America. So we are happy to be here tonight. So, Andrea, I know we talked a little bit in the past, and due to the pandemic, we had to kind of pause our classes because we wanted, our clients to be safe. So what we have started to do is to come online and just to bring hope, to bring encouragement, to bring love, to bring peace during this time. So although we have started back servicing our clients, we have heard from our viewers and clients and parents and teachers who have asked us can you please go back online and let's talk about online and virtual learning. So people have asked us for this. We are honored to be out here tonight, to have you tonight, to bring encouragement, your expertise. It's an honor to have you on the platform with us tonight. So I just want to thank you again and thank our viewers for letting us know what's important to them. So I'm going to share a little bit of your bio, and then we will turn it over to you. So Andrea is a passionate leader who has dedicated her career to education reform. Her teaching experience led to greater understanding of the dire need for schools to establish a high academic demand and intentional social and emotional development. After completing Teach for America, she taught and served as a leadership team member at a charter school in Houston. When she returned home to New York, she continued to support students by overseeing special education programming, assistant principal, and principal positions. She has chosen to work in contexts where the need is high and significant changes are needed to increase student achievement. Wow, I can stop there, but it goes on. As a Ryan Fellow with the Accelerate Institute, an organization which prepares principals to be transformational leaders for students in the communities in which they reside. During her field studies, she served as the director of reading at a turnaround charter middle school in Brooklyn, New York. She revamped the program, oversaw the implementation of Common Core aligned curriculum, coached teachers to hone their craft, and drove literacy initiatives that increased student achievement. Most recently, she served as principal of a charter elementary school in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. In 2 years, she was able to increase student performance data by 26% in math and 19% in ELA. She has also served as an adjunct professor for Relay Graduate School of Education. And you are currently the executive director of Southampton Youth Association. And I want you to talk to us a little bit more about that program and what you guys do. You are dedicated to supporting others and reaching their highest and healthiest potential. I love that. And you believe that all people are entitled to the opportunity to feel energized and love learning, and that it can be a catalyst for change in our communities. Welcome, 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 welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Not only does she have a bachelor's degree, she has a dual master's of science in general and special education. Thank you so much for being here. So, talk to us a little bit about your current role at Southampton Youth Association.
Yes. So the Southampton Youth Association was a big part of my childhood. My dad was a director for almost 40 years. And I'm going into year 3 now as the executive director. And we basically support kids with making healthy, smart choices through recreation. And so we put on recreational programming year round in the community. And we support kids with just making good choices. We staff in a way that really promotes a lot of role modelship for our kids. We employ a lot of youth. We're often their first employment opportunity, and then they go to college and they come back and they still work for us. And they just learn a lot through our principles around positive persistence, leadership, sportsmanship. So it's through recreation that we support kids in the Southampton community. And it's really an honor to be there, given the history my family has with the organization and how instrumental it was in my own upbringing and wanting to go into education.
Wow, that's amazing. Very impressive.
Yeah.
Very inspirational as well. So hopefully just reading your resume, your bio has encouraged someone. So thank you. So we are going to turn the session over to you now for you to present your best tips, practices. And hi, Patricia, how are you? We see you. Good evening.
Hi, everyone. I, again, just want to thank Forever Healed for this opportunity. I think right now, parents, like, we really need to stick together and share all of our best practices and tips, because things are difficult and also just a lot different than I think any of us would have expected. And so I want to start by just saying, whatever choice, I know that there were a lot of choices that schools gave parents in terms of homeschooling or virtual learning or in person, depending on what state or what district you're in. And just want to affirm that whatever choice you made for you and your kids is the right choice. And if you are in a situation where you weren't privileged enough to make that choice, if you had to do something because of the situation you're in, just you should feel and know that we know at least that you're doing your best and your kids are resilient and it will work out. We haven't been in this situation before, and so nobody can say what's right or wrong for you or your family. And so I'm going to talk about some tips for the online virtual learning tonight for those who are in that situation, but just acknowledging that lots of us are in different places, and we should feel good about the choices that we all made. I know that a lot of time we talk about this school and like everything that we lost. Like, this doesn't work and now my kid can't do this or can't do that. And I want to look at it as an opportunity, one, to learn about your kid as a learner in a different way. And two, to be able to teach your kids some things that you may not have otherwise had time to teach them. And so I want to talk about what we can gain. I have a toddler. My husband and I have a 1-year-old. And so when we moved into this situation, we had some real challenges too. But I, was really thinking about my vision for this time. And so my vision is for my toddler's learning to skyrocket in really, really fun ways. And it has. She's almost 19 months. She knows her colors. She knows songs. Her rhythm is out of control. She does sign language, but now she's saying the words that go with her signs, which is amazing. She can buckle her own seats. She can zip up her own pack and play, for better or for worse. She's friendly, and she's truly a joy to be around. And just a quick plug, we post a lot of her. If you want to see some fun toddler stuff on New Black Mom, I'm there on Instagram. But it wasn't easy. And so being at home all of a sudden led to an increase in her breastfeeding. It made other parts of the day, like napping, not as pleasant as they were before. My husband was his work increased. So he's trying to figure out family time, work time, even though we're all home. And at the end of the day, we made it work and we're really, really blessed. And so what I wanted you to do before I go through tips is I want you to think about, what do you want in 10 years about the virtual learning experience with your child? Do you want to talk about how stressful and upsetting it was? Or do you want to say how empowering it was and brag about the things you learned and the bond that you built? And I also want you to think about, what do you want your kid to say about this virtual learning experience at home with you? And so keep in mind that the tips that I offer, at the end of the day, they have to align to your vision. And my hope is that if you don't really have a clear vision, again, not your school's vision or your teacher's vision, your vision for your learning for your child, I hope that if you don't have a clear one by the end of this, you start to create or start to think about what your vision is for this learning time that your kid, that your child or children have at home. All right. All right. So I broke the tips down into two categories. So one, the environmental tips, and two, communication. So I'm going to go through some physical environmental tips right now, some that you may have heard, but I'm going to really, really hone them in because they're really important. So the number one tip for environment that I have is to post your schedule. If you have a younger child, create that schedule, put little pictures up next to each part of the day, but have it visible and up at home. If you have an older child at home or older children, have them create the schedule. This doesn't need to be on some like fancy board. Get a piece of paper, write down the time slot, put what's happening at that time slot, and stick to it. I'm going to share my screen for a second. At the beginning of this, when teachers didn't necessarily have all of their virtual learning ready, I had created a schedule to support parents, just as a starting base. Here it is right here. And you'll notice that the schedule, it's small, so I'll just talk through a few pieces of it. You'll notice that it doesn't start with the first class. It starts with waking up. So if you are doing virtual learning at home, you need to start from the beginning to the end of the day. It needs structure. They may push back against it, but they thrive in the structure, and it really will support them with building independence. The last thing you want is for your kid all of a sudden to be at home for virtual learning and then relying on you for every single thing, right? They need the routine. And so kids need to wake up, get dressed, eat, and get ready for the day. We're going to share this schedule, but you'll also notice that throughout it, there are breaks in between the learning, about 15 minutes or so, sometimes more. And this is one of the advantages of at-home learning. You know, in school, sometimes there's 2 minutes between a period and kids have to get right to it. But sometimes kids really need a brain break. They need to move. They need to get their eyes off the screen. They need to move their bodies. And so incorporate a 10 to 15 break in between subjects can really support your kid with being more successful once they actually start their block of time. I'm going to go off screen really quick for a minute. So every single day you want to have physical activity, just like they would have PE, but not necessarily every day in school they would have PE. A lot of kids have it every other day. This is another opportunity. Every day your kids should be exercising, doing some fun sport. It doesn't matter what it is, jump rope, basketball, push-ups in the living room, figure it out, put a timer on, make them do it. They should also be given the opportunity to do something creative, and kids should be reading every single day. So if you have a child in first, second, third grade, it can be about 20 to 30 minutes. Anything older than that should be 30 to 45 minutes of independent reading outside of the learning. So again, the schedule is not just math, reading, language arts, Spanish, right? It's not just all of the subjects in order. It's what do you want? What's the vision for the day? I strongly suggest having a full day. The virtual learning often will only take, if you condense it, maybe about 3 or 4 hours, depending on the school that you're in. I suggest building out a full day with breaks, with lunch, with physical activity, so that your child is still in the routine of planning and sticking to a schedule that supports them. I think a lot of us, when we graduated from high school, so many of us, whether even if you went to college or not, at some point you said, I wish they would have taught me this in school. This is another one of the big opportunities. Whatever you're doing at home to take care of your house, whether it's raking the leaves or preparing meals or fixing things, incorporating your child into those activities in the day are not only just game changers for them in life, but they're also great bonding activities. Our 1-year-old has been helping us cook breakfast for months. She cracks the egg herself, scrambles it, seasons it, right? And the thing is that it might take longer to do these things. So, like, if you're going to teach your kid how to change the oil, and this, of course, is if you have an older child, then that's going to take longer. It's going to take you thinking about, how do I teach this to someone versus them just standing next to me and watching me do it. But these are really, really valuable lessons that you would not necessarily have had time to do if your kid was in school every day, all day. And so I wanted to take advantage of that. I know that a lot of parents by now have already created a workspace. I've seen all these pictures of cute desks and tables. Make sure your workspace is your workspace. We don't roll out of bed and grab the laptop. You get up, you get dressed, and you go to wherever that space is in your home that you've designated for your workspace, so that the virtual learning is, there's an environment that's conducive for the virtual learning. And then the other thing about the physical environment is I would say, kids are home, you have these schedules and these things, make it fun. As much as I say, make sure your kid gets dressed, because often the way that we dress impacts the way that we feel, right? Like if we have on pajamas, we want to go to bed. And if put on a fancy ball gown, right, you want to go party. And so as much as I encourage that, I would also on this, same token say, if your kid is knocking it out of the park, have a pajama day for one day at home. Like, make it fun. Have your child teach you a PE lesson. Right? You want to do some PE and allow your child to interact with you, and then you can get that work in that you've been trying to get in for a long time too. But there are ways to make it fun and engaging. And I just think the bonding, if we do this right, the bonding that can take place, especially those of you who have middle schoolers at home, this is a real opportunity to connect with kids in a different way. So feel free to post questions about the physical environment. I'm going to jump to the emotional environment, but we're definitely taking questions and are open to interacting with you. So emotionally, I think, our country is in, just like we've always been in, a crazy place, but it's just felt particularly crazy in a pandemic. Kids have watched, people die on TV at the hands of officers. We've been in a really, really stressful time. And as stressed as we have been as adults, kids really, really struggle to handle this and don't know how to process it. And so for the emotional environment, one tip that I have is to amp up the positive reinforcement. Your children need to hear positive things from you. And you don't have to have insight into every piece of their work in order to give them positive reinforcement. It can be a quick, like, I saw how focused you were during that lesson today. Or really nice job sticking to your schedule, or transitioning from one subject to the next. Or I realize that you called the teacher for help. That's really, really great. Keep doing that. We need to give our kids that positive reinforcement. If the world is not going to be a positive place, home needs to be a positive place for your child.
Amen.
I think that, upping the physical touch could be nice as well. If your kid is in a corner on the laptop, just a touch on the shoulder. They're home, so you can give them more quick hugs and kisses just in passing. Just giving them that attention. If when they're in school all day, they don't get that from you, right? Like, it's one of the things that a lot of us miss, is being able to hug our little ones throughout the day, or if they have a challenge. So just to be a little bit more intentional about that. And then the last thing I'll say about the emotional environment is modeling the mindset. I want us to all be careful about the way that we're talking about, like, our kids are hearing everything right now. So if all day long we're complaining about being home, about what we can't eat, about not being able to go out, that is the mindset that our kids will embody. And so it's important to model the positivity, not just tell your kid to be positive and then you're not being positive. We have to be intentional about that for our family. I know we all need to vent. absolutely, it's a human thing to do. But I just want us to think about what we're communicating in front of our children so that we're supporting them through just some things that kids probably shouldn't even be going through um, in that emotional environment at home. So that's amp up the positive reinforcement, more physical touch, and then modeling the mindset that we want our kids to have about this time. All right.
Love it.
All right.
Thank you.
So the social. I think, socially things have been tough with social distancing. For the Southampton Youth Association right now, our mantra for the year is distance makes the fun grow stronger, because we want to focus on the benefits of being distant in sports and in recreation, the way that we can observe, focus on our technique. And I think the social environment at home is one, we have to engage in conversation at home, which means like the TV is super tempting right now. Turn it off, have a meal together without the TV, engage with your children. And then I think, a lot of us are trying to figure out how to be safe in COVID. And so I do know that schools around the country, some of them have kids in cohorts, like they go to school for 2 days and then they're home for 4 days. Or some have kids in smaller class groups, like only 12 or 8 kids in a class. And so my recommendation to stay healthy would be at least to stick to the school group. So if you know that your child is in that group of 12 kids, on the weekend, interact with those same kids so that you're not expanding too soon, because we really don't know what things are going to look like as, the country fully opens up. And then I think like virtual lunch dates and things can be fun for kids too. So you can do is your child maybe wants to set up a Zoom call at lunch with 5 of their friends. And that can be a way for them to be social and use the technology in a different way as well. All right, so we're moving through. I know that I talked fast, but I wanted to make sure we hit them. The spiritual environment is one that is very, when I was thinking about it earlier today, and I was thinking about opportunity. For those of you, and I don't know the different religions of those on the call, but whatever faith that you come from, I come from a Christian faith. And so often there are spiritual things that you learn at home. And because of the separation of school and religion, you can't do at school. But this is an opportunity to incorporate them at home. So for example, just something simple as praying at lunch. So a lot of us, maybe your kid is praying and saying grace in their head at lunchtime, but the chances are is that they get caught up in the routine and in the school day. But now that they're home, that's something that you can reinforce or even do together, because it doesn't even take long. Or a midday prayer. I know that some faiths have a midday prayer that kids often don't do in school because of the structure. This is an opportunity to bring those back. And then maybe when kids do transition back to school, they'll see the use of it. They may do it. They may be brave enough to bow their head and close their eyes, because now they understand that it actually is something that helps keep them grounded. I think you can post scriptures around the house, on the laptops, around the computers, something else in school that's tough to do. And then just using music to reinforce during the day. A lot of us connect with music. My daughter's favorite song is Blessings on Blessings. Every time I turn around, blessings. She loves the song. It's a great song to work out to. You can do it during PE, but there are ways that you can incorporate your faith as well, even while kids are doing the virtual learning. I know that a lot of it is, it's teacher controlled because they're posting everything online, but you control the schedule at home and what it looks like. And so I think focusing on some the spiritual activities that you would want your kid to be carrying into their adulthood is just an awesome opportunity for us to take. All right, so I'm going to stop just for a quick second. I want to know if there's any questions about this environment stuff. Physical, emotional, social, spiritual.
Come on, ask your questions. We see that you out there.
Any questions, thoughts? What's coming up?
Hi, Sandra. Hello.
Hi, Mama.
I have a quick question. Are y'all able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
Oh, okay. Andrea, how important is it to have the kids get away from the computer, to like step away from the computer throughout the day?
Very, 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 very important. And that is one of the reasons why I incorporated like the 15-minute break between subjects, if possible, because they do need to get off of the screen. Like, we don't want to be stuck to screens, relying on screens. I think anything that you're doing for too long, kids start to zone out after a certain amount of time. You know, a lot of teachers were saying at the end of last year that kids were zoomed out, like they had it, you
Yeah.
know, and I think that's where some of the learning is taking place, but it's not where all of the learning is taking place. And so there's also a lot, of research around like whether it's healthy to be looking at a screen for that amount of time. I know some parents, even recently with my sister, my nephew had a writing assignment and she had him write it first. All of the work doesn't have to happen on the laptop.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because you also process things differently when you write them versus when you're typing. And the fact that our kids are great at social media, but they're not great at all the other things online. And so getting a notebook, paper, working out the math can be, really helpful. So I would not be on the screen if I did not have to be.
I like that idea.
Thank
I
you.
know even for myself, when I write things down, I remember
Yeah.
it differently, right? I just process it differently than being on that
Yeah,
computer.
definitely.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say so many things just kind of resonated with me from the time
Yes.
you opened your mouth
Yes.
that you first started.
Yeah.
Just talking about thinking back on this time, right? What do you want your children to remember?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want your children to remember? That, this was a stressful time, like this was the worst time ever, or no, this was a time for us to bond.
Yeah.
You know, I'm telling you, like, this is one thing that COVID has done for me, and I have definitely appreciated it. It's just a bonding time with my family. Now, granted, I don't have the little ones in school. My children are grown, but it's nice to cook with my husband more than what I was doing at first. It's nice to have lunch with him. And then even my college student upstairs, just to touch, he will come in my office and just kind of lay his head on, did that before, COVID. So it's nice. And these are the things that I want to remember, right?
Yeah.
So I loved how you started off with that. Just for parents to even question ourselves, when you look back, what do you want your kids to remember? That you were all stressed out? And,
Right.
it's natural initially, but do you want them to remember that it was a great bonding time, eating with my family,
Yeah.
being touched more, by my parents, to spend that quality time, reading more, being creative, gosh, that resonated with me more than what you know. And then also, we love to say, do what I say and not what I do, right? No, we have to model the behavior. So we want our children to be calm during this time and to look at the positivity in all of this. We have to be positive. So that resonated with me. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are things that I'm like also working with. I mean, I know she's much younger but you gotta sometimes check yourself, like where was I today? Like what do I need to rejuvenate? When we started going on walks, I think in April, it was a game changer for me. And just even to know that about myself, that I needed to be outside to just be connected, right? And to just like feel rejuvenated. I think I just think we have just such an opportunity, and it will really separate, the kids who step out of this with, like, think about, this is going to be like your kids. If you have elementary and middle school kids, this is their college essay. Okay. How they got through COVID-19.
Yeah.
Wow.
and what they did during that time. So
Yeah.
supporting them with this is by far some of the biggest challenges some of our kids have gone through. And then how do they persevere? Right? Like these are the things you can't make up. Like, and some people say, oh, I want to teach my kid resilience. Well, you can't teach resilience unless you actually have a situation that you have to go through, right? And so we
True.
wouldn't choose for our kids to be stressed out, but here we are in a really tough situation. And so now we get to work through it and we get to support each other.
That's good. Come on, guys. Let's come on with your questions. Talk to me.
Well, I have some things on communication here. Yes, I gave some tips on positive, encouraging words during the teaching. And that was mostly, I want parents to not feel like they have to understand all of the academic work in order to give those positive words. And so, there's In Love and Logic, which is a book that some educators use. They use the language of deposits. And so, like, we're going to be asking a lot of our children, right? You got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. But you also want to make sure you're putting enough deposits in the bank for them to feel good and like be ready to do those things. And so it's whether it's just supporting, encouraging their effort, their focus that you see, their ability to reach out for support, just their positive attitude in going into all of the work. I think there's a lot of other ways. And so you shouldn't feel like you have to understand all the work in order to reinforce your child. But that actually brings me to communication, because I think the positive reinforcement is piece of it. And the accountability is another piece of it. Now that kids are home, I think you should be looking at their assignments. Again, whether or not you understand the content, you should look at the assignments. You should challenge them to do more. Sometimes a student will get an assignment that says, well, do at least this much. Push your kid to do beyond that, right? Like be that person to be like, no, you can do more than that, push them and then engage with them, but don't do their work for them. I think the classic example on TV is always when the parent does the science experiment. Well, now kids are home with all of their work, and it's a disservice for you to do the thinking or to do the actual work for them. Don't rob them of their learning because you're there or because you're excited that you get to be a part. Be a part of the process by letting them tell you what they're going to do, teach back their experiences, share their ideas. But please don't do work for them. Let them earn their grades and let their grades reflect what they can actually do and know so that they can receive the support that they need if they need that support. And then also, I think if your kid's in school, home, wherever, but debriefing the day is super important. And I think a lot of kids, especially when when I taught in middle school, you ask them, how was the day? They say good, or they say fine. And so asking a little bit more specific questions, again, even if you don't know about it, can help spark more conversation. So what was challenging today? What was something new that you learned today? How did you participate in class, or did you participate in any of the class discussions? How did you feel during a particular subject? Asking more specific questions so that they can actually engage. But if you just say, well, how was the day? You might hit that wall with that one word answer.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to know that you're more interested than that. And remember, they have a ton of subjects all day. And again, I'll say should be reading independently. So even checking in on like, well, what's happening in your book now? I never read that book. Tell me about it. Right? Like true interest, not like, well, did you read it? Prove it. Right? You don't want to come from that place. You want to come from a place where like, oh, you're reading about what? What? Where did that come from? How did the character do that? And what does that remind you of? Just engaging with your kid about their work so that they're having that social interaction with you, but they also know and feel that you care about what's going on. So there's talking with your children, and of course, they're talking with the teacher. And my advice around talking with the teacher, and again, I'm going to send you, I have these tips listed out, so I'll shoot them to you, but it's to increase your touch points with talking with the teacher and increase your patience.
Wow.
So I'm going to come from an educator and a mom standpoint. And I know that it's not your problem, but teachers also were hit with a completely different role, job, position at one time. And so they are also trying to figure it out. And so having a good relationship with the teacher can really, really support. But increase your touch points. Ask about the work. If there is a Google Classroom or a system, often parents can have access to it. So ask for your own access to the system that the school is using. And if they don't, you can always use your child's login information, but it is important to ask. I think I've spoken with quite a few of my friends who work in schools too, and they're saying they want parents to ask questions. There's no stupid question. Ask the questions so that everybody can work together. Sometimes you may ask something that they didn't think about yet because it's all new, and that's okay. But ask, ask, ask. If you have a child with special needs, you already know that you are your child's number one advocate. And your child is entitled to services, whether we're in a pandemic or not. And so there's a couple of things. If your child had services that were not given in March, April, May, June, you are still entitled to those services as well. And so this requires you to have a conversation with the school so that you know how to meet your child's needs. And I'll give some examples of this because I think a lot of our kids have individualized education plans or 504s. It's important that they're not forgotten in the virtual learning space. And so you might have a child who gets more time on an assignment. So that means that whenever that assignment is due, your child should probably have an extended due date. Or if there's an assignment due at the end of a period, or if there's a timed test, your child is entitled to more time. And so you want to make sure that's honored in the virtual learning space as well, so that your kid gets what they need. Another example is breaks. So some children who struggle with attention may have an accommodation where they get more breaks. That's probably going to be up to you at home to manage. And I always say it's great when kids can manage their own breaks. Give your kid a timer. Let them know in 15 minutes you get a 4-minute break or whatever the case is, so that they can start to self-manage that, because that is the ultimate goal anyway, that they can figure out how to do it, but make sure that they're getting it. If your child receives counseling services, they are still entitled to those services in whatever group is mandated. So sometimes counseling is given one-on-one. Sometimes, depending on the goals, it's a small group that kids are in. These services are being offered virtually. If they didn't get these services back in March, April, May, June, you want to make sure that you're getting double those services, or that there's a plan to amp up on those services, because you signed off on those services for a reason and your child is entitled to them. Some services are a little bit more difficult, like physical therapy or occupational therapy may be more difficult to do virtually. But at this point, a lot of these clinics and things are open. And so it's just important that you reach out and don't rely on somebody else to reach out, to make sure that your child is getting the services that they need. I would also say, whether your child has special needs or not, reducing distractions at home is crucial. You can't be watching TV in the same room where he or she is supposed to be doing their learning. It is a distraction. You want to make sure that you're doing your part to set them up for success as well. If there are any questions about parents of kids who are here with special needs, just feel free to drop them in there, and we can see if we can figure it out. The last piece of communication is communication with other parents. I recommend that if you're a parent here listening and your child is in a cohort or a class, create a Facebook group now for the parents in that class or in that particular group. You don't need a PTA to be involved. And these are parents who are going to have a very similar experience. When I taught elementary school, I used to tell my students, ask 3 before me. This could also help the teacher. You figuring out some of this logistical stuff together and then leaving the academic questions for your child or for their program, leaving those questions for the teacher. But it's a great way to connect with other parents. It could also be a great social interaction for you with the other families. I would keep these spaces positive. If you have like grievances and complaints, then you need to bring them formally. Keep these spaces positive and supportive for the parents in that cohort. But I strongly recommend, given the amount of parents on Facebook, start a Facebook group with the families so that you can start to support each other with the assignments, with the work, or whatever it is that comes up for you as parents. And then, in the schedule that I'm going to share, I have a lot of other online resources. And so there are different things you can do, like CNN.com does a student news every day. And that's something you can listen to at breakfast time. It's 10 minutes and it's great. It's great for adults too. But they initially did it for kids, but it's something that I really recommend. And a lot of the Scholastic and a lot of the other big companies are offering services for free. Wow. Because of the context that we're in right now. So I know you want to manage the screen time as well, but I also know that different schools are giving different amounts of work. And so if you're finding that your child needs more guided work, there's Khan Academy, which supports with math. They literally they do lessons for your child and then give practice activities. There's read alouds that you can just find on YouTube for your child for the virtual learning if you don't have time. But there are a lot of resources out there at your disposal so that you can use in order to support. But the main message around the virtual learning is that, like, as parents, right, we're not doing the virtual learning. Our kids are. And so it's up to us to create all of the spaces around it in order to support the virtual learning. You should have technology from the school by now. I know there are Wi-Fi situations that people were figuring out, but outside of that, it's really up to you to create the environment because school doesn't exist in the same way that it does. But I want us to feel empowered to do so. Yeah. And to feel the opportunity that we have as parents in order to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? What are y'all thinking?
I feel empowered.
Yeah, definitely. I have a question coming from a parent. Okay, as a parent, me and my son currently share the same space. And that's going to change by this weekend. But for right now, I'm working in the same room that he's doing his virtual learning. And, he's a little shy kid. So, when I hear the teacher asking questions, I'm peeking around the computer going, are you going to answer? What did you say? I know I should not be doing that. So can you give the parents some tips to stay out of it? Leave the kids alone and let them learn like they are actually in school.
Well, that was the tip. You just gave it, right? Leave the kids alone, let them do their work in school. But I do think that if participation is because you have a shy kid you may not speak up, maybe that's something you set a goal around for the week. Like, hey, I'm in the room and I can kind of hear. So I want to hear you at least participate 2 times every day. And then by the end of the week, have a celebration, but at least that takes off you having that urge to push. And then your child can start to think about ahead of time. All right, well, my mom's going to be listening for me to participate 2 times a day. They already know. And then you can, create some celebration around that when they do. So I would definitely set a goal about it. I do think a lot of kids are, even if they are not shy in classroom, the virtual space is different.
Yeah.
And so, the atmosphere is just totally different. And so setting a goal around it could be something that helps both of you. Okay. And, maybe mama needs to put headphones on so she can do her work.
Yes. Thank you.
Of course.
All right. So we We've had environmental tips, guys. We had emotional tips that we talked about, social environment. We talked about spiritual environment. We talked about communication. So, what questions do you have? Questions, comments, what resonated with you? Anything you're going to try? Let us know. You said everything. And if you want a copy of the tips and the schedule that she was talking about, you can just email us and we can get it out to you at foreverhealedllc@gmail.com. Or you can send an instant message through Forever Healed on Facebook and we will get that out to you. So we're going to give 5 more seconds for any questions. This was a lot of great material.
I'm an educator. I'm not afraid of wait time. You can.
What? Okay. Question. I found out for myself, when I started working from home, that the snacking was constant. I see that in my child. How important is it to stick to those scheduled breakfast and lunch times?
Yes. So it's funny. I saw a woman on Instagram. She did it. It was an amazing idea. She basically packed her kids' lunch every day, put it on the counter, just like if they were going to go to school.
I can understand.
So I think that absolutely the eating time should be scheduled. That could mean that you incorporate an extra snack because your kid is home, and maybe like in real life they are hungry before lunchtime at school, but I would keep the times broken up, because what happens is that we eat when we're bored. We eat like it becomes a distraction, right? You go broke, right? Like the kids are eating out of house and home. But I would stick to a schedule. I would have eating times and snack breaks and lunch breaks in the schedule as well.
Okay, thank you.
That's good.
Yeah. But it was so cute. She did it for her husband too. She had everybody because they were eating so much. And if you have middle school kids, right, and high school, like they just consume so much food. And she's like, I bought all these snacks for the week and they were gone by Tuesday. And I think some structure around eating is healthy too. We don't just eat all day. Like you're not hungry all day.
Right. We start to eat because of our emotions. Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Emotional stirred. Yeah.
We do.
Energy relieving behaviors, and eating is definitely one of them.
I do think that if you are able to make sure that your kid is having really healthy foods throughout the day, that is definitely something that you want to look at. A lot of carbs and bread around lunchtime can make learning in the afternoon more difficult. It's like a spike in sugar. Kids, start to feel lethargic. So I would definitely try to make sure that your kids are eating fresh fruit and vegetables at every single meal, and not just consuming a lot of like carbs and pasta and all that. Even though, I've had a toddler, she loves bread, but you want to make sure that they're eating healthy things because it does impact their performance. Another thing that I didn't mention before is that if you have control over the schedule, I would push the subjects that your child is struggling with to the beginning of the day. Often that's when kids are sharpest, they have more stamina, they're able to persevere because they haven't been worn with all of the other work. So if you're not logging on to live classes, I would definitely push the more challenging work to the beginning of the day.
I feel empowered. I wish I had some young ones at home. I feel empowered. Like I could do this. Yes.
Right.
We can. I think, that's the other thing is like, we can absolutely do this. And by the way, it won't be perfect. There will be days when you make a decision to do something different because you see what your kid needs or what your family needs, and that is totally okay too. And so I think we need to just give ourselves that grace. Like, this is really difficult, and we'd be crazy if we didn't actually look and see what our kids need and pay attention to how we need to support them. And so while I'm giving all of these tips and, I really encourage you to at least just try and figure out like, okay, well, I don't have this. If there's nothing you do, get a schedule and a workspace together for your kid at home, and everything else will start to come into play. But don't be hard on yourself around this, because we are doing our best. We're all doing our best in trying to figure this out, and we absolutely will.
We will. And we appreciate you coming tonight and gracing our platform.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Wonderful tip. Thank you.
And
Thank
I
you for having me.
love how it was an holistic approach to it, right? Just talking about the environment and the social aspect, the spiritual aspect of it. That was just phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've learned a lot, and I love the positive reinforcement piece as well.
Got it. Thank you so much.
It
was my pleasure.
Thank you, ladies. Well, guys, thanks for joining us tonight. Make sure that you like and share this video.
Yes.
Know educators or parents who would benefit from this video, please share. And again, if you would like a copy of the outline, please email us. We can get that over to you. You can send us a message through our Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, and we will get that right over to you. Everybody have a blessed night. I want you guys to stay encouraged, stay inspired. I hope you feel empowered tonight. We are going to keep walking with you through this journey. We're going to be on next week with a counselor on our board to talk about the emotional aspect as well and what the children may be feeling during this time. So keep hanging in here with us, and we're going to keep hanging in here with you guys. I pray everybody has a restful night tonight. We love you, and we will see you next week.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.